Thank you, Christian, for giving me the opportunity to present here. And also a special thanks to our audience who made their time to join the Green Carbon webinar today. So I am Anwarul Islam. I have been doing my MPhil research here in James Cook University, Australia. My advisor is Dr. Elsa Antunes, and I'm going to talk about a critical literature review on silver nanoparticle, from synthesis and application to its mitigation through low-cost adsorption of biochar. Let's begin. So I'm going to talk about the background of my literature review and production and use of silver nanoparticle, and also the toxicity of silver nanoparticle and the regulation of silver nanoparticles so far, and the mitigation technologies, and finally conclusion. So the background. So before going to talk about silver nanoparticle, let's talk about silver. So silver is a transitional heavy metal having the atomic number 47, and it remains in the Earth's surface as pure form or sometimes alloy with other minerals like the metals like gold, zinc, and copper. And interestingly, most of the silver have been produced as a byproduct from the zinc or copper refinery. And especially silver is used for the jewelries, for example, like the solar panels and photographic plate, coins and bullions as investment instruments. So now the nanoparticle. So we are living in kind of a nanotechnology at the moment, but still sometimes it is significant to discuss about how small is a nanoparticle. So if I have a 1 meter length of a stick, and if I cut into 1,000 pieces, one equal piece is going to be of 1 millimeter. Similarly, if I cut the same stick into 1 billion pieces, one piece is going to be of 1 nanometer. We can see a few examples here. So if you see the right side, the tennis ball, it has the 68 million nanometer diameter. And simply a punctuation mark like the full stop can be 1 million nanometer diameter. And similarly, if we see a single glucose molecule, which is 1 nanometer diameter, so any of the particles which has its any of the dimension between 1 to 100 nanometer, which is called nanoparticle. So here you can see a few picture of silver nanoparticles. So even it can be different shape, as we can see, especially if you see the picture C and also H, you see the rod or pin forms, but still one of the dimension is between 1 to 100 nanometer, then it is going to be treated as silver nanoparticle. Now the distinct physicochemical properties of silver nanoparticle. First of all, silver nanoparticle has very special antimicrobial property, which makes them suitable to be used in healthcare and medical science, especially for the medical equipment. The silver nanoparticle coating helps them to protect from the microbial activities, and especially the band-aids and gauze, the other fabrics which has been used for the wound bandage or something, is being treated with silver nanoparticle to avoid any antimicrobial activity or infection. And especially we can remember before discovering of antibiotics, silver nano like the silver compounds were used to treat the wound. And nowadays, one of the global concern is the antibiotic resistance for many patients. So those patients can be treated with silver nanoparticle containing or silver containing drugs. The second special property is the very high thermal and electrical conductivity, which make them suitable to be used for electronic circuits, for the electronic devices. And third special property is the special optical property, like the surface plasma resonance, which make them suitable to be used as a biosensor or drug delivery or the disease diagnostics equipment and technologies. Now, if you see the life cycle of silver nanoparticle, it begins from the production sites. So production site produces silver nanoparticle and the industrial wastewater, which may contain silver nanoparticle residue. And these silver nanoparticle are used for personal care products, and also, as we already discussed, the medical or healthcare products and electronics, and especially the functional textiles. For example, the active wears normally is treated with silver nanoparticle, so that when we wear those textiles and we do the workout or exercise and we sweat, and it protects to develop any microbial activities and also prohibit the nuisance odor. And as Frank discussed, like for the water treatment, also it can, for the water filtration, silver nanoparticle can also be used to treat the bacteria from the water. And also it can, silver nanoparticle can be used for air filtration. So all those uses lead to two types of waste. So one is the domestic wastewater, and other one is the solid waste. So the industrial wastewater and domestic wastewater are being treated in wastewater treatment plant. And after the treatment, the treated water goes to the water bodies. Then the rest part convert into the solid sludge or the biosolid. And for best possible case, all the solid waste or the solid sludge can go to the waste incineration plant. And this is the best possible scenario. Even in Australia or many countries, they don't have the waste incineration plant for this kind of waste. Only so far the medical waste, normally the countries who can afford, they use incineration, but not for the other waste. So even though if it is used in incineration plant, it will create the ash. And since the silver nanoparticle is metal, so it is going to remain in the ash, and which will go for the landfilling. And after getting in contact with water, it can again go to the water. So the challenges to deal with silver nanoparticle. Silver nanoparticle already is being classified as hazardous material by WHO and UN EPA, US EPA, EU and Australia. And ultimately, as we have seen already, the silver nanoparticles or the silver compounds are going to the soil and water environment. And the limitation for the conventional wastewater treatment technologies. And finally, the toxic impact on aquatic ecosystem, even when the concentration of silver nanoparticle is like the nano level or the microgram per liter levels. Now let's talk about the production process and the usage data. So as you can see, the production process can be divided into 4 different segments. One is the first column is the physical methods, and second column is the chemical method, and third one is the biological, and fourth one is mechanical method to produce silver nanoparticle. So if I briefly tell you about the physical method, where the pure metallic form of silver is being used, and like the physical force has been used to produce the nano form of metals. But the chemical methods and biological methods, which are basically the reduction of silver precursor, for example, the silver nitrate compounds or some other silver compounds. So here, if the reducing agent is coming from the synthetic source, then we are going to call them the chemical process. But at the same time, the reducing material can be from the can come from the plant extract or microbial reduction process, and often it's called about the they call as green production process of silver nanoparticle or eco-friendly, because here we don't use any reducing agent or the stabilizing agent, which we use for the chemical synthesis process. And finally, the ball milling is just the milling of the pure form of silver, metallic silver, to produce silver nanoparticle. So each process has its own advantage and disadvantage, and also it depends on the end use. So if we need like pure form and for the expensive uses, for example, for the electronics and others, then physical method is more suitable. And again, if we consider about the environment or environmental footprint or stable silver nanoparticle, then biological method is the best one. And finally, if we look for the cheap silver nanoparticle for cheap uses, then the chemical method is the convenient method to produce silver nanoparticle. Now, the production data says that in 2009, 500 tons per year silver nanoparticle were produced. And it is expected that by 2025, it's going to be 900 tons per year. And within this quantity, like 30% silver nanoparticle are used for medical products or the medical supplements or some things, and 25% for paints and coatings, especially for the packaging, and also the anti-weathering coating and paints. And textile, we discussed 15%, then 15% in the cosmetics, and rest 15% for other uses. Now, the ultimate fate of silver nanoparticle. So straightway, the silver nanoparticle, for example, 500 tons, 41% straightway goes to landfill, and 44% pass through the wastewater treatment plant, and 30% from pass through the waste incineration plant, and the 44% pass through the wastewater treatment plant. From these, like 31% pass as with the biosolid or the solid slabs, and 13% still remain on treated water, treated wastewater. So our focus is especially the wastewater treatment plant, where the 44%, and if we are able to reduce the quantity from here, then eventually we will reduce from the biosolid, and also we will reduce from the treated effluent. That's the focus. Now, the toxicity of silver nanoparticle. So before going to talk about the toxicity, the silver nanoparticle, when it comes to the natural environment, for example, water environment or soil environment, it can transform into different like a species. For example, it can aggregate together. Then it can be like oxidized to form silver oxide, silver sulfide, or like other organic silver compound, or it can remain as silver nanoparticle. So if you see the chemical transformation, normally the metallic silver, it produces the silver ion. And sometimes the metallic silver can also react with the sulfide, hydrogen sulfide, to produce silver sulfide, which is more stable and you can say like non-toxic. But again, this silver sulfide can be ionized again in acidic environment. So any form of silver ion or the silver ion sometimes can react with oxygen and produce reactive oxygen species. So these silver ion and reactive oxygen species are the most toxic for any living organism or the living cell. For example, silver ion directly react with the thiol group of enzyme and make them like imbalance the electron system in the cell. And like reactive oxygen space is directly react with a DNA and denature DNA and RNA. So these are the main responsible for the toxicity. But again, it depends on the pH of the environment and also dissolved oxygen matter and dissolved oxygen of the environment or coexisting electrolytes and hardness of water, particle size, shape, and coating and exposure time. So now the exposure route of silver nanoparticles. So silver nanoparticle, first, if it comes to the landfill, then it can kill the beneficial bacteria in the soil and it can be uptake by the plants. Similarly, when it comes to the aquatic ecosystem, then it can harm the aquatic lives. And especially the human exposure, it can be by skin contact, and it can be ingestion by injection of like silver containing supplements or food or any medication. And finally, the silver nanoparticle can be inhaled from any sources or even the minings. And the plant and fish species which accumulate the silver by taking those food, it can also expose to human and create the toxicity. Now you can see few picture of the toxicity like the Delphina and rainbow tart, and you can see the bluish hand. So overexposure of silver nanoparticle can create like the Argyra disease, called skin can turn bluish, and the plant. So now the available regulation for silver nanoparticle. And to be honest, so far, there is no separate regulation for silver nanoparticle. Whichever regulation we have or guideline, all are related to metallic silver, I mean the elemental silver or silver ion. So that's why scientists have warned about widespread use of silver nanoparticle. And the regulatory guidelines, as I told already, just for the elemental form. So it's the like the challenge, and insufficient toxicological data for present and future exposure scenario. We have seen the toxicity, it can be toxic and still the concentration is low, but we don't have sufficient data like for the long-term exposure, what can happen for the aquatic system or the human exposure. So these data are insufficient. And further research is underway, definitely. We will be talking very soon. So now whatever the regulation is available for elemental silver or metallic ionic silver, you can see the US, Australia, Canada, Germany, China, Switzerland, like the WHO, all the concentration in between like 1 microgram per liter to 1 milligram per liter. So that's the limit for drinking water, for example, and also the fresh water and marine water. So very like the low concentration are allowable. Even it covered only the silver ion, not the silver nanoparticles. So now the mitigation. So you can see the conventional sewage treatment plant. And if we see the process of the wastewater treatment plant, the primary treatment, which include the screening or the grid chamber and the primary clarifier to separate the primary, like the pollutant. And after that, it goes to the secondary treatment, where basically the bacteria dominant treatment process. And like in contact of air, it digests the organic matter in the wastewater. But it cannot help for the metallic pollutant, and especially the bacteria dominant secondary treatment is often like the inhibit the process by the silver nanoparticles toxicity, because it is toxic to the microbes. Even this is the conventional treatment plant, for optimal case, it can handle maximum like the less than 20 milligram per liter concentration it cannot handle. But we have seen already the 0.1 to like 3.2 microgram per liter is the guideline value so far. So we have to treat, and this process cannot treat less than 20 milligram per liter. Now, what are the technologies are available to mitigate this silver nanoparticle pollution? So we have sequencing batch reactor, activated slash process, ion exchange, membrane filtration, reverse osmosis. So all the processes has like kind of an advantage and disadvantage. For example, some of the process can like majority of the silver can be removed, but not 100%. But if we see like the reverse osmosis, it can remove 100%. But the problem is to treat like bulk quantity of wastewater industrial scale is impossible because it's not cost effective. It's good for like treat like low quantity of water for drinking purpose or something, but not for the bulk treatment. It's very costly. But if we see the adsorption process, fully removal is possible, and also it's low cost and eco-friendly and easy operation. The only disadvantage you can say maybe the slow process. So what is adsorption? So if you compare like absorption and adsorption, if you see the right side, the picture, you can see the block and the red dots. The red dots are the adsorbent material. So when it go into the material inside, we call it absorption. But when it just inhere in top of the surface, we call adsorption. So adsorption can be even like physisorption or chemisorption. So what are the adsorbent so far we have? The activated carbon, clay, bio-waste material, cellulosic material, zeolite or graphene. So again, like each adsorbent has like its advantage and disadvantage. So if I compare like the activated carbon, they are the most commercially used like adsorbent material to treat air and water. But for silver nanoparticle particularly, to work with activated carbon, you need to bring down the pH at 4. We know that after the sewage treatment plant, we get the pH of water like 7 to 8.5 or something. But to treat with activated carbon, you need to bring down the pH. And again, before discharge, you need to pull up the pH by adding extra alkali or other chemicals, which means it's going to be more chemical intensive and energy intensive, which is very unsuitable for silver removal. But again, like the graphene, again, the reproducibility or reusability of graphene it tends to convert into graphite, and it's not chemically and energy effective. But if you compare like the biochar, already Frank mentioned, that is the like the eco-friendly process. Why it's eco-friendly? It's low cost, low energy, and it can sequester the carbons. So all the bio-waste material, when it goes to landfill, it create like produce methane. Methane is 25 times harmful than carbon dioxide for greenhouse effect. So this way, they are very green and eco-friendly process. But maybe the challenge can be regeneration or something, but we need to study. So now already biochar, already Frank discussed about the biochar. So I can just show you a few pictures like this is the like the electron microscopic picture of biochar. You can see like thousands or millions of micro pores, so which offer biochar very large surface area. And the surface functionality help them to react as a ion exchange material, as Frank mentioned in his previous presentation. So what are the research so far we have found where biochar have been used to treat silver or silver nanoparticle? As Frank mentioned, like there are a number of heavy metals which can be removed by biochar, but there are very few research on silver removal. So as you can see, so far we have found only 4 research, and we summarize the outcome of those research. You can see like only 1 modification have been studied so far, but if you see the absorption capacity, that is the maximum, which means modification can increase the absorption capacity. Then the pH dependency was not studied in any of the study. Then only silver nitrate have been studied for the experimental solution, but we know by the time already the transformation of silver nanoparticle can be like silver ion, silver sulfide, silver nanoparticles, silver aggregate. So we need to do the research with realistic environment. Finally, the contact time is too long. So contact time is also important to make any of the like the technology to make it the commercially viable. So now the conclusion. So I got the knowledge gap, like the mitigation of silver contaminant has not been well explored so far, and tailor-made biochar for adsorption of silver has not been well demonstrated. Then contaminant adsorption by biochar has mainly been studied for batch process, and the reusability is a key factor which not been studied very well so far. And the detailed toxicological data for short term and long term is still we need to understand. So if you like find the future research directives based on the knowledge gap, you can find like selection of appropriate biochar, maybe the right biomass to convert the right quality of biochar, which will be more effective for silver nanoparticle. Then the low cost modification of biochar can be tried. Then assessment of the adsorption capacity under realistic environment, not only focusing the silver nitrate solution or something, then experiment of selectivity and recyclability. And then the scaling up to like the batch process to continuous process for industrial use. And finally, the in-depth cost study, of course, is a big matter to understand the economical feasibility of the technology. So that's all from my side. So if you have any question and comment, and thank you for listening. And we have published our literature review in Journal of Environmental Management. So if you are interested to go more in detail, because of the time constraint, I skipped a lot of things. But if you can interested about the other things or the data, you can find here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anwarul. Very interesting topic. Haven't heard a lot about that before. You got a question from John. What would you think, how do you dispose of silver-loaded biochar? And under what conditions does the silver desorb? Or is there any information on that already?
So yes, so as I mentioned, like this is my literature review. So still I'm going to study those things because we don't have that much data. But yes, we know for the other heavy metals, we can regenerate 3 or 4 cycle of the biochar. Then what we can do, like either we have to, again, we have to go for the land application, or we can, we need to try, we can like leachate those heavy metals from which will be concentrated in biochar. We can leachate it and separate it. And sometimes some of the metals may be cost effective to recovery from those leachate, which will come from the biochar.
Any idea what's the price of recovered silver nanoparticles, or what?
So far, I don't have any idea, but yeah, sometimes, you know, this is not because of the cost, because when we landfill the heavy metal loaded biochar, again, it will come to the water environment. So we are investing the money to separate those heavy metal to protect the environment. Then after the water treatment, again, if we straightway dispose those biochar into the landfill, then again it goes to the environment. So maybe it's not because of the cost, but also to really care about the environment.
Okay, we are perfectly on time. I have a last question for you. Are you working on the experiment with biochar and silver nanoparticle at the moment, or?
Yes, I am doing. Yes, I'm doing. Okay, and hopefully in future, I'm going to present some the experimental data when it will be peer reviewed. Still, I'm working on that.
Okay, great. So we can look forward to that. Thank